Hey guys, Jason here with a word to the wise. I can't confirm all information that is moving about. A lot of people say they have inside government news from these larger channels, and interestingly, I just watched a new video from Shaking My Head Productions where he's talking to a CIA director, ex-CIA director, whatever, and how he's talking about how they inform and they misinform anybody they're pretty much dealing with. You know, that way they can get people on their side with true information and then, you know, dump a bunch of false information to have them dump out in the media and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, people that say that I got an inside guy, it's like, you can't trust anybody that says that, because if that kind of information is coming out and these guys have private meetings, that means when the information comes around that information has gotten out, that means somebody in the room is doing something they're not supposed to. And with the kind of technology they have built into cell phones, computers, airwaves, what have you, nothing goes out without being able to be tracked easily. And we know this. So anybody that's saying, oh, well, I got the inside scoop and I'm getting inside information, I don't buy a dime of whatever they're saying. I don't care to hear that kind of information. People talking about extraplanetary things coming into our orbit and across the galaxy, I ain't buying none of it. Ain't buying none of it. Excuse me for using ain't as a word. I know ain't a word. But interesting. And like I said, I'm not saying I got inside information or nothing, but I'm telling you guys, I feel it in my bones, just as a warning, something around Christmas time and that timepiece dedication week-long thing that happens around that same time. That was very key in the last 2 years of things that rolled out. And if you look at, I believe I have that what is it, the Roswell video, I can't remember what I called it, but it's in my playlist, and it talks about the 70 years. What happened 70 years ago, back in the 40s? Roswell happened. And who were they going to worship? You know, like in Daniel, gods that I'll take my hat off for this stuff, gods that their fathers knew not. Well, aliens. And look at the time of the dedicating temples in that timepiece land, the underground temples that I think Leland has showed, and I think Many Fish has talked about them many times. But you date when those dedication times happened compared to Roswell, and when that country became a land, or that land became a country, I should say. Very interesting how those timelines seem to line up pretty well. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what the Bible was speaking of, but it's interesting that men on earth have made these things happen, and then God is in control of all these things, possibly, and He's the one that is making, you know, man decide to do these things. They gave the land to them. They you know, the time of which World War II ended, and then the declaration was made that given those people that timepiece land back, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm just saying, look at all the extreme news of things that are coming out that haven't been able to be spoken of. That, you know, I see things moving in Florida. I see things moving over there with Poking of the Bear. I see things moving over there in the land of the Crown, we'll say. Things that are, you know, that we dealt with over the last 2 or 3 years. A lot of this crazy information is going around, and I'm not going to touch on any of it because, like I said, who knows what they're going to do, pull out, blah, blah, blah. So in this idea, again, of the seals, I just want to touch on one more time, is when you look at how the 7 seals come out, or the trumpets come out of the last seal. So if you go to chapter 8, very first verses speak of this. And when he opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven in the space of half an hour. Also, if you divvy up, a day in heaven is 1,000 years on earth. So if you do the math of 24 hours in an earth day, it works out to about 83.3, I think, years on earth is an hour. So half an hour then would be about 41 hours, or not hours, 41 years on earth. And if you go back from, say, today, go back 40 years, you're in the Reagan era. And I've shown that picture that shows all the presidents with the signing in of the Education Day Act, I believe it was, from Reagan on. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, when the first angel sounds, hail mingled with fire, hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. A third part of the trees were burned up, and the grass, and all green grass was burned up. And the second angel sounded, and a great mountain burning with fire cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel, there was a great star from heaven, burning also, as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains. The star was called wormwood, and a third part of the water became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because it was made bitter. So, this can totally happen. If this is a future event, then the trumpets haven't been blown at all. We're still waiting for the four horsemen to ride in that whole theory process. That means that we're not looking for the bowls to be poured out, and that means that the timeline, say as Leland has in his what is it? Is it Ezekiel calendar? That whole thing gets thrown out the window. That means none of that has happened. He is completely wrong. So any of those, I only get a few views, but any of anybody out there that watches his videos and they have seen that calendar time and time again, you can try to tell him that his calendar is completely wrong if none of this stuff has happened yet. And that means that it starts at another time. But I also think that the woman clothed with the sun, as in Revelation 12, I think that happens like it happens over and over and over. So it's not the first time I think that's ever happened in history. But I think when you look at everything else that goes along with the prophecies in Scripture, I think all that has to be aligned as well. So now, if we want to look at this in a kind of an understanding in a B form, another form, is that the creatures in the sea that had life and died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. What if that is metaphorically speaking of peoples and vessels? Because then when you go also into Revelation 16, and it talks about the same thing. The second angel poured his vial upon the sea, just as the second trumpet angel did, poured it upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul in the sea died. And a third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shall be, because thou hast judged thus. For they have shed the blood of the saints and the prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgments. So out of the altar, looking at the fifth seal, those who were under the altar crying out, looking at is this shedding of the blood of the saints and the prophets all throughout time? Looking at, I'm kind of just going off the top of my. You go into the bottom of Revelation 18, where it talks about Mystery Babylon, for all the blood of the saints and the prophet. Let me see. Verse 24 in chapter 18. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and all that were slain upon the earth. In her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. So a lot of people talking about, there's some sort of a prophetic thing that has to happen to America. And yet, a lot of people like to say that America's Mystery Babylon. And then that would mean that that's all that. All the blood of the prophets and the saints and all that were slain upon the earth came out of America. Doesn't really make a lot of sense when you look at the entire Bible, Old and New Testament. So, here again, when was this in chapter 16 in Revelation, when it talks about the third angel pouring out his vial because they have shed the blood of the saints and the prophets, and that was given them blood to drink? Is this doing something because they did this 2,000 years ago, and now is that time of judgment to be poured out on them? Or is this something that happens when we're looking at Revelation 13 with the two beasts, those who are in captivity and those who do not be a part of the MOTB? So there's a lot to look at here, right? And that's why I'm saying 2023, somebody showed that if you take that number, get rid of the 0 and put it backwards. Interesting how that number kind of relays into secret societies. So, also I want to touch on all life in the sea died, or all life that had all that had life in the sea died, a third of them. And also, when it kind of speaks to what it says in Revelation 16, always thinking about, like, remember the old hidden symbol of Christians used to be the fish, supposedly, or maybe that was kind of a Catholic thing. I don't know how that originated or the whole story fully. I remember the Scarlet Pimpernel story back in the day. But Jesus also says, I will make you fishers of men. And when you look at, I think it's, was it Obadiah? Or, I want to get I know I'll know it if I see it. Habakkuk. If you go through Habakkuk, it's only 3 very short chapters. Barely makes up 2 pages in the Bible. But it's interesting that it talks about how those who are doing wrong to the righteous, they cast out nets to gather them and kill them, I believe is what it says. Paraphrasing again, don't quote me on that. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just a lot of things to keep an eye on, and I want to touch on that. I also heard some amazing things in Luke, which relay over into Matthew 25. I want to touch on that, but I really want to know where those prophecies were spoken. I'm going to try to go through some of the older prophets and see if I can find it before I speak on them, because I want to be able to show where they were spoken of by the prophets, where Jesus spoke of them, and then also where Luke speaks of them. It's kind of a cool thing I've always kind of wondered about. So I'll leave it at that. Word of the wise, guys. God bless. Have a great day. I'll be back. But like I said, just keep tabs. It's another 11 days. Today's December 14th. Let's just see what happens. See where we go from here. All right. God bless.